7 o'clock. Are you all set up? Okay, great. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And first thing this evening, I would take nominations for election of board chair.
I nominate Ricky Davidson as board chair.
I'll second it.
Any other nominations? Any discussion? All those in favor of Ricky as board chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like no opposed. Okay, it's over to you, Ricky.
All right, thanks so much. Thank you all very much for continuing to have faith in me. So we need nominations for a board vice chair. Yes.
I would nominate Bob Woodward as the board vice chair.
Okay. Second. Moved and seconded. All right. Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those abstentions? None. Okay. Wow. And then we also need nominations for clerk. So nominations for clerk. And we can't do we can't nominate the person who's been clerk because she's no longer on the board. So.
As Steve says, because we're ruthless. We're going to be ruthless.
It's going to be one of those nights. Excellent. All right, so there are nominations for clerk.
I guess the question is anybody here actually interested in being
Is
clerk?
willing to be clerk, yes. And I will say, for those of you that are concerned, the goal is to try to find somebody to do the note-taking for us. We've been unsuccessful so far since our last note-taker left, but that is the goal, is to hire somebody to do the bulk of the work. But until then.
Sean, are you really?
Anybody?
Who's not here tonight?
Katie, possibility.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that maybe we should put this position off until we get a full board
Okay.
quorum, and then,
And until our other three members are here to weigh in on whether they're willing to do it or not.
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. That's fine with me. We can postpone that election till the next meeting. We also need nominations for elections of our 3 WSESU voting members. And the voting members were Ruth, Ann, and Russ. And then with Bob as an alternate. So we need at least three voting members for the SU board.
I'll nominate Ann and be good.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded? Okay.
I'll nominate Russ.
And Russ?
I'll second that.
Then moved and seconded? Anybody else?
Nominate Katie.
Okay. Nominate Kate, all right. Is there a second for that?
Second.
All right. All right, so we have Ann, Russ, and Katie as our potential 3 WSESU board voting members. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? None? Okay. So that's done.
Should we do an alternate?
We could do an alternate. Is there a nomination for an alternate?
I would like to nominate Bob Woodward.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. So that's done. Now, we have to establish meeting days and times, which we typically have been the first and third Monday of the month forever, pretty much. And then we adjust with holidays and school vacations as need be. Does anybody propose an alternate time for us to meet? Or is everybody good with the first and third Mondays of the month? And I know with the other schools in the district, it would probably screw everything up if we moved. All right, so we'll keep us on first and third Monday
At 7?
at 7 p.m. here unless otherwise posted. And then committees, just kind of go through who was on what committees. So finance currently, or was, Ruth, Mike Collier, Bob, and Sean. Mike has indicated that he's happy to stay on from Vernon until June 30th, and Bob is happy to stay on as well. Then TCC is Ruth, myself, Russ, Sean, and Ian. Planning and Policy is Ann, myself, Katie, and Ian. BAMS is Mike, myself, Katie, Russ is an alternate, and Sean. And then WRCC is Ruth, Ann, Katie, and Bob.
What is RCC?
WRCC is the Career Center, so it's a special advisory committee to the Career Center, and BAMS is specific to
There's
BAMS.
specific times when these committees meet, because daytime is very difficult for me.
Yeah, typically, I know that Finance tends to meet early in the mornings,
8 o'clock
8 o'clock.
on every, usually on Thursdays every month.
Okay, at 8 a.m. at the central office. TCC, Planning and Policy, they tend to meet just before this meeting most of the time, so it's 6 or 6:30 before this meeting. BAMS usually meets in the mornings at the middle school, and WRCC is sort of ad hoc feeling.
It's usually midday when we,
Well, usually when we have meetings, it's 8 o'clock at the Career Center, and I don't know how often we have a regional advisory board luncheon, which
Yeah.
is every 3 months maybe?
yeah, maybe 4
quarterly.
times a year.
And that's 11.
And 11.
So that's typically meeting times. So is anybody having a desire to leave any committees that they're currently on? Let's start with that. No? Everybody's good with where they are? And Rick, if you just went to everything that Ruth was in, it would be Finance, which is 8 o'clock on Thursday mornings, TCC, which is usually just before this, and WRCC, which is 8 o'clock, sometimes. Whenever, yeah. Unless there's something you have a real desire to do.
Yeah. The Career Center, again, 8 o'clock is going to be difficult
Okay.
for me. The finance one's going to be very difficult for
Okay.
me. I'll do it, but I'm not,
Right.
I'd like to be there.
Yeah,
I am going to do it.
right, which is totally legit. How are you with TC at 6 o'clock for here, for TCC? That works for you? Okay.
That's on Mondays usually,
Usually on Mondays, yeah.
follows this meeting.
Yeah, unless there's an issue.
Proceed this meeting.
Yeah, just before this meeting.
That's fine.
And it may just be once a month if that.
Yeah. So the other one that meets at that same time usually is Planning and Policy. And that's usually, it meets at 6, just before this meeting also,
Okay.
or 6:30. Yeah.
So basically, it's just looking at showing up to these Monday meetings out.
An hour early, an
That's
hour,
fine.
half hour, if
That's
there's a committee meeting scheduled.
That's fine.
All right, I will put Rick in my spot in Planning and Policy, and I will be happy to take Ruth's spot on Finance. How does that sound to everybody? And WRCC, we'll just have 3 for right now, and we'll see if anybody that really wants to go to that. So the committees at their next meeting will have to have a restructuring meeting as well to elect a chair of each committee, so.
In the past, we've done brief meetings after this meeting for
Right.
restructuring. Are we going to do that tonight?
I don't know if we should do that, only since we're missing a third of our
That makes
members.
sense.
So, I
They probably
think,
need to be warned as well.
yeah, they would technically would need to be warned, but I think that we should just wait until everybody's present. So whether the committee, if the committee meets between now and before the next board meeting, we can do it then, or we can do it after, around the next board meeting, if it hasn't met. The other things that are listed, I'm sorry.
I just have a point that might fit in right here, because you had made mention to the fact that Vernon may be leaving
Mhm.
on July 1, 2018.
Yeah.
But I asked the same question, and then I looked up the withdrawal agreement, and as written, it says that the date could be as late as July 1, 2019. So I think there's a good possibility that Mike will be able to serve longer than this July 1st.
I think convincing Mike to do that will then be the trick. I think Mike's willing to stay on until the end of June, but beyond that.
Well,
And
I think the
officially-
town of Vernon did appoint him in the interim.
Yes, they did, and that was the intent for Vernon to stay until June 30, 2019, but then they got another ruling that they needed to be done June 30 this year. So that's why we had that big upheaval at budget time in December, because we had gotten that last minute information that Vernon was going to be on a different budget. So
That wasn't Vernon's choice, that was the AOE.
That was the AOE choice.
Oh, I see.
Right.
So is there current documentation that shows that?
All I have is what you're holding right there, I suspect.
No, because this one says July 1st.
And that's what I have. Nothing came other
Does it say?
than Donna Russo Savage and Brad James from the state saying it had to be June 30th this year.
I would think that they would send us new documentation that was updated to what
Say that?
currently is going to happen.
Does the agreement say on that date?
No,
or
what
by
it
that
says
date?
is,
If it's by that date.
Vernon and it says in Brattleboro Union terminated as of a date no later than.
So it could be
July
tomorrow.
1. It could be tomorrow.
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
So I don't think they need.
So they don't need to issue a different piece of documentation then because of that. Because it says by,
No,
Well, it'd be nice for planning to know that though, I mean, because,
And the email that Mike sent me was essentially that Vernon's belief is that they're done as of June 30, so he's staying on until then.
I see.
Okay.
And that's what we budgeted, that they would all be tuition students for next year.
As of
Oh,
July
I
1st.
see.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other things that we just have to, in the past, the WSESU certified negotiator from this board has been Bob, and the classified negotiator has been me. Is everybody okay with that staying that way? And then Russ has been the representative from this board to the WSESU Finance Committee. Russ, you still willing to serve in that capacity?
I am.
Okay, good. So we'll leave that all the same then. So that's all of our changes, I think.
And Katie's gonna.
Yeah, we put Katie there, yeah. All right, so moving on to clerk's report. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of March 5th as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additions, deletions, corrections?
There was one that I saw under the TCC where we talked about Latin and the Peak Step program. It currently reads program at BAMS. It was BAMS and the UHS.
Okay. Add that in. Any other additions, deletions, or corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions?
Staying.
Abstaining for attendance?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. All right, we approved the minutes. Communications, does any board members have any other communications? Yes, Sean?
I do, but I think that I could bring them up under the report, either from BAMS or the high school,
Okay.
because it has to do with the walkout and, well, I'll say there's another piece, because it's two-pronged. Probably everybody saw last Saturday the fact that the town board had brought up the idea of a resolution which they passed for gun reform in the legislature. And so I read that with interest, and then I found their resolution on their website. It's on the WSESU website. So I would like to, under communications or later, have a discussion at this level, even though it isn't on the agenda, if that's permissible.
I mean, we could do that under new business
Okay,
later on.
all right.
All right. Is that it? All right. So, no other communications, so moving on to recognition of groups and individual visitors, and we have some visitors.
We do.
So I
Great.
can introduce them.
Great.
Paul Cohen, Tom Yahn, have been working, starting last year with Ron, this year continuing with me, with Michael Burnett, Drew some on starting a nursing
And Steve.
program. And Steve, absolutely, and Steve. I don't know why I looked by you, Steve, sorry. And
Behind
Steve-
the scenes, like you
Yes,
always
yes. And so they are going to talk with us a little bit about what that's going to look like.
Thanks.
I think you wanted to get started.
Yeah, I'd like to start by squeezing in a little thing about Collegiate High School in general. First of all, to thank everybody in this room, basically. Your predecessor, as well as you, have been big supporters of the dual enrollment program. Steve has been on board since the beginning. And we just got the middle school on last year, and when you hear Paul's report on our new healthcare program, you'll see that we finally actually brought some action in your direction. So, but I'd like to just offer a couple of things that I recently discovered by looking at the report that the Agency of Education just put out on dual enrollment, which has been around for about 5 years now. And one of those things is that they took a look at how all the colleges and high schools and career centers are performing. About 5 years ago, Peter Schulman actually started with us by wondering what we were doing down here around getting kids into college, and basically he fronted the dual enrollment part of Act 77, which got passed 5 years ago, which offers 2 vouchers to every student in the state to pursue this thing called dual enrollment. And I'm going to pass around just an FAQ about dual enrollment that we won't go into now. But since then, we've offered this coming year, we're offering about 50 courses, and we just registered our final batch of students. We'll have over 300 students in the school taking part in that. And when I look at our last 10 years of experience, it looks like we've enrolled about 250 students, or more accurately, course places in dual enrollment this year. And I multiplied by that by the cheapest course rate I could find in the country, which is CCV, which is $700 a course. And if you multiply those two, it shows that we've saved members of this community, assuming that they all get transferred into not just CCV, but courses that cost 4 times that much, around $2 million in the last 10 years. And we just thank you for your support. It costs money to do that. I think maybe over those 10 years, you've allocated maybe $500,000 to the scholarships and things that go along with supporting that. So it's not a bad return on investment, and we thank you a lot for your kind of like undying support. I hear that our budget goes through, from Frank, I hear our budget goes through pretty readily every time it comes up. So thanks a lot, and thank you on behalf of the kids and the teachers. I guess the people that I won't have a chance to thank in person tonight are our teachers. Our teachers are the people that make the courses happen. They are adjuncts to the colleges, and they teach on behalf of the colleges, and they teach for absolutely no money. So this is all done out of their belief in the kids and their belief in higher education and moving on. So I wanted you to know that also. Simultaneously, I got this report from the state, and I will hand out the website for that. It's a pretty big document, but there's some really interesting facts in there. I'm not going to go through all of them. But one of those is that of kids that take dual enrollment courses, statewide, about 70% of those students end up enrolling in college, which is a pretty good rate. And the one that fascinated me even more, that about 60% of the students that are free and reduced lunch go on to college, which is a lot higher rate than I ever would have thought. So those are other things that I think this community and this board has already been behind in terms of serving people that maybe don't serve as well as they should. So let me just run off a few things that we have to be proud of that I noted in this report. Brattleboro has the most number of college partners, by far more than any other high school or career center in the state. We have about 10 college partners that work with us in and out of the state. The percentage of students enrolled from the high school in dual enrollment is higher than any high school in the state. And that doesn't count the people that go to college that we have partners with outside of the state because they are not eligible to be shown in the Vermont statistics. Kids that use up their 2 vouchers, we pay their way thanks to the money you vote to us. And sophomores are allowed into some of our classes, and we have to pay for them. So not even counting those people, we serve the most people in the state. We're first in the number of students that use vouchers, the free vouchers, and that includes fast forward tickets that we use at the Career Center. And we're first in the number of students enrolled in more than 2 courses. So we're leading the way. There are 4 or 5 other schools that we've mentored over the last 3 years using a grant from McClure Foundation that are in the top 10 themselves. So we can take a little bit of credit for that. So that's just the numbers part. The most important part are the students and the programs. And I'll just say a couple words about them. This summer we decided we wanted to move our philosophy from just offering a random bunch of courses, as you can see on the list. There's a lot of interesting courses there, but we didn't really have any way of having them have a real impact on students in terms of a program, a career, a life, moving on to college. So we started to really focus on getting people out in the community where they're going to cross paths with real world people. It's moving from memorizing facts and figures and doing rote learning to actually applying your knowledge to something that may be part of your life. And we have all of our teachers have picked up that initiative, and I just wanted to mention a few people. Mike Auerbach teaches environmental science. He's had his group of students out in the streets interviewing people about how introducing environmental improvements is going to affect poor people. I mean, it's nice to put solar panels on your house, but can poor people do it? And they've been to 4 or 5 conferences at this in the last year. And as a result, they are starting to get graduates to come back to join their class after they're done taking the class because they're interested in the topic. So they have a whole group of students who aren't even taking the class anymore. Our mentoring and leadership course, taught by Casey Dean, has 6 weeks internships for all the students in our own schools. And the teachers tell me that they wish they could keep them forever. They're one of the few people that can actually, relate to kids in tight situations. Law and Society has been to 2 prisons this year. We ignore the notes from their parents that say, "Could you just leave them there?" I got that one from Steve. Each student is responsible for going out and bringing a lawyer who they've interviewed and prepped to present in the class into the class every year. I just got a note from a guy named Bill Holliday with a list of how he got his students out in the community. Every Saturday morning, I don't know if anybody's aware of it, for the last semester, he had his kids running a radio show on, is it KVT or TS?
Yes.
KVT. So I'm passing around the sites where you can listen in on these shows, but they've been there every morning relating music and film to social change and other things. And it's quite a gift to our community. So those are just a few of the kinds of things that represent how we're trying to move our programs out into the community, not just have them sitting in the classroom all day long. So one of the first things that we did, since Ron asked us many years ago to see if we could start a nursing program that represents what I've been talking about, is our nursing program. Nursing and Health Careers, we're calling it. That does get kids into the community, does take advantage of courses at both the high school and the Career Center. And as I hear people talk about the school of the future, I can check every box that they say we ought to be doing in this program. So Paul has been working diligently over this last year to get this ready to launch, which we're about to do, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's been fun to have a project with just one focus, I have to say. I've enjoyed this quite a bit. And what we're hoping to do is accomplish a number of things. One would be to create a program for students that has multiple exit points. In other words, some kids are clearly college bound, they want to go into a medical field. We can provide them a number of courses and other opportunities, which I'll get into, to prepare them for the rigors of college and hopefully success at that. Number of dual enrollment credit courses, courses that fulfill requirements in specific nursing programs in Vermont. But we also want an exit point for kids who aren't going to college right away, who don't see that as an option for them when they graduate high school. And at this point, our focus primarily is on creating a course that would prepare kids to take the Vermont State licensing exam to become a nursing assistant. It'll be a one-semester, double block length course. We'll be favoring seniors. We'll probably allow some juniors in there. And we know through, anecdotally, through meetings, for example, just the other day at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, as we were explaining the LNA, the nursing assistant course, I think it was briefly misunderstood that thinking that we already had this course in place, and the head of the nursing department was ready to immediately hire everybody that we had. So in time, we will produce opportunities for these kids. So the other thing is that healthcare positions in Vermont are projected to be of increasing need as the baby boomers get older and so on and so forth. There's a clear need for nurses and other people in health careers, and the jobs pay pretty well. The average salary in Vermont of a registered nurse with an associate's degree is $62,800 a year, according to a study that was published by the McClure Foundation. I have some copies for you. A nursing assistant, by taking a semester-length course, based on information we're hearing, as I mentioned, should be able to find work pretty easily in that field. And maybe over time, as they settle in, decide then to go to college, and maybe with the support of their employer. The average salary for nursing assistants in Vermont with no college is $31,000 a year right now. Again, a good starting base of income, I think, for students. So we wanted to create a program that would address the needs of having multiple opportunities for students based on their individual needs, which I think aligns well with the flexible pathways outlined in Act 77. We wanted good paying jobs, and we're hoping to encourage kids to consider staying local after they finish their schooling. I think we've been seeing a bit of an exodus of younger people from this area, and with the options that we'll be providing, there'll be a conduit, hopefully, to the Vermont Technical College's nursing program, as well as some other schools. Right now we're in close communications with VTC's downtown nursing campus about that. And we're working closely with the hospitals and nursing homes to create opportunities for job shadows, varied look at different careers, tours, and ultimately some good working internships. So if students choose to attend, for example, VTC's nursing program, after having spent a bit of time in activities with those people at the college through guest speakers, through shadowing students, attending classes and labs on their campus. The college has a great chance to get to know our kids, and our kids get hopefully to feel pretty comfortable in a college environment. And should they go to school locally, I think the odds increase that they'll want work locally and they may decide to remain locally, which I think would be in everybody's interest. Right now, we're offering 7 courses. 6 courses in this, and there are many others that could be taken as auxiliary courses, but most of them have already existed. I'm going to name them very quickly. Medical terminology, principles of biomedical science, human body systems, medical interventions, biomedical innovation, and human growth and development, and nutrition. I forgot to write that in my notes. Nutrition and human growth and development are 2 courses required of first-year nursing students at VTC. They, along with the other courses I listed, or most of the other courses I listed, offer dual college credit. So kids are potentially earning 18, 21 college credits as they're finding their way through high school and are prepared to do that. The course that we're adding is this licensed nursing assistant course. I did a preliminary look at course requests. It's way too early to have any definitive information, but at this point, all the courses that we're looking at look to be like they're getting pretty well populated. There seems to be some real interest. We're in the process of formalizing partnerships with both VTC and Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. And what we hear, excuse me, in our conversations with them, is that they see this only as a win-win. VTC would like to get to know our students because they would like qualified, eligible students ready for the rigors of college work. And we feel that students who go through this program, who've earned a cluster of college credits, who've had a variety of experiences in working and touring hospitals and other medical facilities, will prove to be strong students. As far as the high school and how that relates, for example, the college is really clear that kids with a recent and pretty strong background in Algebra 2 have a whole lot going for them in a nursing program. And that's obviously a course at the high school that we can recommend. They're currently working, there are probably currently more adults with a few years separating them from college in VTC's program right now. And I think they're understanding that that's a difficult transition sometimes for adults. And it's easier for kids because they've proven their ability in college courses, and Algebra 2 is pretty recent in their minds, I think. So, as far as our reach, I've already been, thanks to Sean, over to BAMS and met with all of their 8th graders. We plan to outreach to 7th graders as well. We've gotten mailings out to parents of 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, and specific coursework. Some courses can be done as early as the 9th grade, but students in the 7th and 8th grade who simply express an interest in a potential career down the road in the healthcare field will become a member of our healthcare club that we're starting, and a coordinator part-time to manage all of that. That would involve bringing in a nice supply of guest speakers, arranging for the tours and job shadows, and then even conveying to VTC during the admissions process a broader picture of the students who may be applying to that program. So I think, oh yeah, and then one, just another example of an exit point. Right now we're really focusing on LNA, but the Community College of Vermont has a medical coding certificate course, and I can only imagine that a student who's been through the Career Center's medical terminology class, and maybe the Career Center's accounting class through the business program, would be in a great position to be successful in that certificate program. So we see lots of ways for people to enter the job market and to hopefully minimize the cost of that for kids who just aren't ready for college yet, or whatever reason, for choosing not to attend. Okay, sorry for my drop. That's it, I think, and I've got a couple of handouts I'll get around, I guess.
Any questions?
You mentioned outreach at BAMS. Are you doing any outreach in Putney or Dummerston at the middle schools there?
At this point, I've been to Putney and done a presentation, not to Dummerston, but a letter has gone home to the parents of all of those 8th graders at both those schools.
And we'd be happy to do that, you know, as we get the program rolling. You have a letter there, right?
Yeah, what I'm handing out is just some general information for you, two-sided, and then a copy of the letter along with some interesting income information that we've sent to parents in the district. And there's a little brochure from the McClure Foundation listing healthcare positions, many of them as top-paying jobs in high demand in the state of Vermont.
Well, I gotta say, I think this is wonderful. I know a number of young people who, after they've graduated, have realized, oh, I could get a really good job being an LNA, and then they have to find the class to take a class someplace to get certified. They find, you know, and I knew a couple of students in the last couple of years that were driving from here to Keene to take a certification class, you know, the semester-long class, and if they could have taken it in high school, it would have stepped.
We're excited about it. The Red Cross offers this course in a 150-hour program. We'll be providing kids more time than that. We're talking about over 2.5 hours a day for half a year. So we think we can get a lot of kids over that finish line.
Almost everybody we've talked to also in the community has said one of the reasons that people have difficulty, like at GTC, making it through programs is they don't understand the realities of being in that field. And they say that people that do LNAs do really well in their LPN and RN programs. So they're excited to hear that part for the academic side of it as well.
And I think there's a real incentive when students get into a workplace environment. In nursing in particular, I think there's nothing that can quite explain the day a typical day that a nurse goes through, unless you're in that job yourself. And we had a girl last year in an internship at the hospital in their delivery unit, and I know part of what she enjoyed the most was just the camaraderie with the other nurses working there. And you wouldn't get that simply from a school set of courses. She actually attended 2 deliveries, one of which was a C-section as a high school student, and she's planning to become a nurse now.
That's awesome. Any other questions?
I'd just like to say that the nursing program and some of the others, by having that real-world aspect, besides the motivation of having a job when you leave or being able to get into college easier, it makes the learning, the academics, mean a lot more. And so it's not just doing something to get a grade, something on a transcript, that they see that relationship. And I think that both of you have talked about that.
Yeah,
It's
oh,
really valuable.
absolutely. I know the girl last year in the birthing unit had the medical terminology course, and she said that was so much help to get her on the job and going right away, because she didn't have a big learning curve.
And I think colleges more and more, since information is so available on the internet, that they don't see their job as giving people information anymore, but in helping people understand how to apply information to problem solving. So a lot of colleges are saying, that's what we want from you guys. So it's that community piece that adds that dimension, I think. Our teachers do it all the time anyway, but.
Thanks for the time.
Excellent, thank you so much for coming, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so on our agenda next is consent agenda. And Start with finance, building, and transportation. Has finance met?
No, I don't believe we have since,
Our last
no,
meeting.
because it was prior to the meeting.
Okay, okay. WSESU finance,
Has not met.
okay. Planning and policy?
That's not met.
I will say, just to planning and policy, folks, especially since I'm stepping off there, there's a number of policies that the SU board has passed that are in the hopper for us to do, so be in touch with Barb at central office. She has them. When I was in signing paperwork the other day, she asked me to pass that along. TCC,
Has not met.
BAMS committee,
Has not met.
WRCC,
Was snowed out.
okay. Was going to, but didn't. Excellent. All right, so that's it for consent agenda. There's nothing to report, so nothing really to approve because we just didn't meet. So we're gonna move to administrative reports. And let's start way down there with Drew for WRCC.
It is way down there now, isn't it?
It is way down there now.
All right, so we're coming off a busy stretch, still wrapping up some tours and some road shows, but that's at the end of our outreach process, and we'll be getting ready to start our admissions process coming up pretty soon. Students are active with the Skills USA, and FBLA will be at Lake Moore this week. I think that was reported out last time. So that's an active period for that. As far as highlights for Skills USA, we had a $1,000 donation from Brattleboro Subaru for the Skills USA, which we thank. There I'm on. We thank Brattleboro Subaru for that. Along the lines of adult ed, the Regional Advisory Board meeting on Tuesday was going to be a time to really kind of talk about some of the new launches that we have. So I think for today, what I would like to do is just share with you guys a concept paper on the UConnect platform. UConnect is the name of the vendor. I think we're going to call this like Wyndham Career Connections, but for folks who have been, Keith? For kind of folks who have been hearing about this throughout the year, it is time for us to launch this platform. I think, really dovetailing into that conversation about dual enrollment and what comes next for students. This will be the first kind of major initiative for myself as the Director of Adult Ed. So I think, in the past, if you looked at what adult ed traditionally did, it would be kind of an advertisement in the paper for instructors, kind of more advertising in the newspaper and radio for classes that were being offered, and then enrolling those classes. What this new technological platform will offer is a way to really stay connected with all those people on a continuous basis. It's a dynamic platform that is very responsive to the career development needs of students and adult learners in our region. So the first point of outreach for me is to be working with all our 5 placing school districts to make sure that all our graduating seniors are being loaded into this system so that they can be aware of all that this region has to offer in the way of training and education and services, as well as employment. So within this platform, the end user, whether it was a student or a career professional or an employer, would be divided up into a bunch of kind of different user types depending on who they were, and they would be streamed content on a regular basis, weekly or bi-monthly. That content would be related to what their goals were. Within that, this is a systems approach, versus kind of the traditional approach of maybe having like a career expo where all of the different employers come into town for one day and the students go and you kind of look for jobs. within this kind of technological interface, that's happening 365 days a year. So it's a saturation-based platform that happens over time. And as more and more users sign on, more and more employers sign on, more and more educators and trainers sign on, all that content is available on a publicly facing website. But once you log in, there's a hierarchy of information that it streams to you as an individual based on your based on your career development needs. So it can serve us, regionally, but also, you can stay connected to college students that are out of town with internships that are here in Brattleboro, as well as, looking to extend that health careers pathway. If you say that you're interested in the health careers when you onboard into the process, into the platform, which is simply just kind of checking a box. On the administrative side, we would be able to be in regular contact with those people. So when we offer our LNA class to adults or our EMT class, you can target market those folks with an email saying, this class is going to be offered, here's the instructor, do you have any questions? And then the end user, through kind of through technological engagement and connectivity, can really kind of say what they're interested in as they go through the platform as well. So, really excited to launch this. We've been working in partnership with the Wyndham WorkNet Advisory Board, as well as the Regional Career Development Council. Natalie Brennan, Suzanne Wagner, Lee Marth, and Alex Beck from their respective agencies will all be, on a content management team, so that, as that content, is streamed, those folks will have user logins, as well as like all the people who would be contributing to this platform. Like, instead of me working with the Vermont, New Hampshire Red Cross to say, hey, advertise your LNA program, they would have a user login where they could put their own content in. We have a new building credential with SEON, Southeastern Vermont Energy Network. They would have their own login. They could promote their own stuff as well as all the other stuff that they're regularly posting. BSAC 70 by 25, they came through the other day. They'll be posting their monthly newsletters. And it kind of builds and grows like that. So that that the post-secondary landscape that's available in our area, for that college-going crowd, as well as for the folks that are still in the area, can get a regular diet of what's available, but also really how those things connect. So when we're advertising our early childhood program that has that's going to be using the Northern Lights credential, we would also be advertising the employers that are helping put that program together that want to have those folks come work for them, and that credential kind of all at the same time to those variety of different users. So that same type of process will work for all our different kind of career pathways that we will have up on the platform. And what we'll look to do is really connect networks of users, trainers and educators, as well as employers, so that on a regional basis we can kind of see how to connect the dots. Instead of kind of a referral-based system, folks will really be able to navigate things a lot more for themselves. So, with the content that we'll have up and ready for, May 1st, we will launch, and then that will continue to evolve and grow, and it will be a continuously, evolving and growing platform where that kind of user membership will inevitably increase over time. And, for our partners within the community doing employment outreach and things like that, they'll be logging their people on, and they've all been communicated to. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how it evolves. But what it does is it traffics that end user back to that person's website so that they can get that information. So that's kind of that first launch within adult ed, and there's a variety of other kind of career development solutions that will be linked to that and be up on that platform when it launches. Yep.
You do have, from the student end, who can log on to that?
Anybody. So you as a member of the public can just go on. It's a publicly facing website. Just by putting your name and your email, then that would put you into the technology. So, you know, we'll be marketing it that way. We'll be marketing it to go that way. We'll be marketing it to go directly to employers that way. So it will really allow adult ed to enter a more dynamic stage. And even already what's happening is, like, you know, we're being asked to contract for services a little bit more already. So like for our Serve Safe program, we're working with the Brattleboro Co-op to set up a program for them. That's a much better way to do business for adult ed than to advertise in the Brattleboro Reformer and get one registrant at a time, when we have restaurants and resorts and ski mountains that need their people to have that 16-hour credential. With Vermont Associates, they want a computer literacy program. I would rather work with them when they have 10 enrollees, and then we contract that program. So we'll be looking to see what we can do with that. But I think, you know, that'll be the beginnings of a shifting context that's much more workforce oriented and much more focused on those workforce credentials that employers will.
Okay. Any other questions for Drew?
I'd really like to, when you get it up and running, I'd like to see like a whiteboard presentation or something.
Yeah.
Where you come back, I mean, you got free advertising right
Yeah,
now.
I have a lot of you know, content that I could share with you. So if that's something that folks want to slot, I could. It's very, like, it's kind of complicated.
Say May, right?
Yeah, May it will launch, and you can kind of see that first phase of the public launch. You know, we'll. You know, but if you guys wanted to look in, I certainly have those kinds of presentations available that I've been showing regularly all through town.
I didn't understand the difference between the adult ed and students. I didn't understand that breakout. I heard Russ's question, but all I heard was adult ed and with your handout.
Yeah, well, it like really, we, you know, in Vermont, health careers aren't the only folks exploiting that are experiencing a shortage of workers. And we really have to discover the workforce of tomorrow. We don't even really know where they are as a state, because we're the second oldest state in the union and we're the oldest county, with declining enrollment that we've experienced for the last decade in K through 12. So it's, you know, so there's really that worker shortage. One thing that we want to do is really stay connected to our graduating seniors through this technology and make sure that they stay connected to education, stay connected to a structured learning environment, and remain continuously aware of where they can get support and where the training and jobs are, but also put that on a platform so that those things are on a timeline. So if you want to do an LNA, we'll be advertising the non-degree grant at the same time, so you know how those two timelines correlate. VSAC will be posting with their with their outreach and support hours in their various locations. Most of that content is all on corkboards all over town. I think we need to stay engaged with the graduating population and all those students, because there is also data that suggests that there's over 10,000 18 to 22-year-olds who simply aren't working after graduation. And we need to figure out a direct and immediate way to onboard them, not just into a job, but with some sort of career perspective and some sort of career literacy, so they know how what they're doing now can impact what comes tomorrow. So it's really that first step is staying connected to this graduating crop of seniors with a regular diet of information on how to get involved, how to get a job, how to progress towards post-secondary education. Every flower doesn't bloom at the same time, and a lot of the Wyndham Career Center programs will really focus on that. Expanding the post-secondary landscape, beyond just college, to just continued continued skill building, and really career literacy and really awareness. This is the most complex world that's ever been invented, and I think a lot of graduating seniors are not really aware of what they're walking into.
Sure. Great. Thank you. So let's move down the table to BAMS.
Hi, everyone. Let's see, I have a few past events that I want to share. I believe you should have received my BAMS Focus, which had some updates. And Rick, I'll get you on that list. It's kind of like a staff newsletter, but every week or two I publish it. So starting with the most difficult thing, we had a week ago today, we had a student pass away, 7th grader, and so that's shaking the community. And we found out this was a situation where this passing was early in the morning and school began, and we found out right as we were getting ready to start school. So it was a pretty rough week last week. It was, the staff and the kids were all finding out that morning in school. So it was just a rough day. The kids, handled it as understandably a pretty rough day for a lot of kids. A lot of students went home, and the staff did their best to support them, and they handled a pretty challenging situation as well as I could have expected. The high school counselors came over and provided a lot of support. And we had a snow day the day after that, which was probably pretty challenging for some of those kids who are home alone. This was a popular boy, and he'll be missed, certainly. We expect services hearing next Saturday. I don't know if that's been confirmed. And so it'll likely be a pretty large crowd. We're setting up sharing circles at BAMS so students can come and share stories or just listen, positive stories, experiences. So it's a pretty rough thing for 12, 13, 14-year-olds to handle, many of them probably experiencing death for the first time in their lives, and when it comes to a classmate, it's even more challenging. So that's we're moving on, and appreciate everyone's support. Let's see, slightly better news moving ahead. The other big news last week was the walkout. Perhaps it was a little bit somber given what had transpired earlier in the week, but our students, we knew that they were going to walk out, and probably 2/3 of them walked out. So we created just the conditions for them to be able to do it safely, and schools have a delicate balance to play there when it comes to these kind of things. So we stayed politically neutral. Student leadership kind of took it over. A student named Hannah Lane really took charge, and Amar Vargas helped lead the kids in a little walk, and they made signs, and Hannah did a great job working with the student leadership and our adult leaders, and just creating the expectations for the students. And we had opportunities for students who did not want to participate to be inside. Staff stayed inside with them. Staff supervised outside but didn't participate in any way. And overall, it worked out about as well as I could have imagined. There were no problems. The kids were great. Nobody had to be, weren't dealing with a bunch of fallout from it. So from my perspective, it was good, and the students were able to voice their thoughts as best they could. One other recent event, also on that last Monday night, I went up to, I took 2 students with me up to Dover, or they met me up there. They're 2 Dover students, Chloe Chase and Hayden Meckel, who were at Dover last year. And Dover every year, once a year, has a night where the local schools can set up a table, and 4th, 5th, and 6th grade families come in, and they just kind of look around because they have school choice. They check out what's available to them as 7th graders. So there were private schools there and public schools, and so Hayden and Chloe did a great job talking to students who, a lot of them they knew, and the families they knew, about BAMS, and really represented us well. So that was a nice evening. And as you know, we we have most of the Dover students coming to Brattleboro, so we want to keep that trend up. A few future events coming up. The 21st, so Wednesday night, is our spring concert. It was canceled twice, once for weather, once because of the student passing. So it's going to be this coming Wednesday, 7 p.m. in the auditorium. So it's still set up. Thursday night we have our exploratory open house. So that's health, phys ed, music, band, foreign languages, et cetera, they're going to set up and display, and our BEAMS program is going to be on display starting at 5:30 and then at 6:30. So we invite the incoming 6th graders to that and all of our current 7th and 8th graders. So it's a pretty good turnout for that evening. And then we have an incoming 6th grade information night after the open house. So because we found that a lot of 6th grade families were coming, they had a lot of questions, so we decided let's do our information night on the same evening. So we'll be doing that. So any expecting incoming families are welcome. 5:30 and then the info is at 6:30. And then student-led conferences for 7th grade are coming up on half days, coming up the 23rd and the 26th. That's a Friday, Monday. And so our students are working hard on preparing their conferences. We have a lot of families, well, I wouldn't say a lot. We have a fair number of families who still haven't signed up. So we're working to recruit those families to get signed up. Last but not least, we're working on, all schools now have to create what's called a continuous improvement plan. It's essentially an action plan. I mentioned it last meeting, whether any board members are interested in joining that work, and I'll be bringing our work to you, but if anybody's still interested in serving and talking with my leadership team and being part of that process, let me know. We met this afternoon and began to look at our plan, building off the central office or the district-wide plan, and tailoring that plan for bands. So we have a fair amount to do, but today we got quite a bit done, and I'm happy with our progress. Any questions? All right, great, thank you.
All right, let's move to the high school.
Thanks. I want to go back to Tom and Paul's presentation for a second. Tom had mentioned that we have the most college partners, most in the state. And I do want to take a second to recognize that the reason we do is the work that Tom's done. I wish he was here so he could hear me say it. He has been tireless in going to colleges, working with deans of students, working with professors, connecting college faculty with our faculty. So I can't say enough about what he's done. So I do want to make sure that the board knows that the reason we have so many college partners is the hard work that Tom has done. And also working with him here is Heather Harrison, who is our office manager and also serves as the collegiate high school registrar. And she is the person that goes into classes and registers at each and every student with each and every college and tracks when the college has their registration date and make sure that the teachers know. So Heather has been a godsend in that regard as well. Also, Tom mentioned tracking the tracks, and I was going to mention it as well. We were given a nice headline in the, actually not headline, 6th page, 3rd page, but a full page in the Vermont Agency of Education Arts newsletter, which comes out periodically. And I would pass that around so you could see a little bit more on the work that Bill has done with those students and some reflections from some students themselves in the class. In other news, I am thrilled that BUHS 2016 graduate John Sawyer Shaw, who was one of our greatest Chinese scholars and quite an accomplished musician, has spent 2 years at the UVM sister school in Yunnan province in China. He came back last week and spent a day with Haiyan Hu's classes talking about Chinese. He presented entirely in Chinese, talked to the students about it, answered their questions. It's wonderful to see because anytime we can have a graduate come back and talk to our students, it is absolutely phenomenal because our students can look at that person and say, okay, that's me in a few years. And so I was really proud that John came back and did that. Also, our MCL department hosted an all-day comprehensible input workshop on Saturday, the 17th. We had 35 language teachers from around New England attend. It was organized by our Spanish teacher, Angie Dodd. And it's great to know that, you know, our MCL department continues to lead across New England. I don't know if you're aware, but we're one of the only modern and classical language departments that just doesn't use any books at all, places the emphasis on oral proficiency, places the emphasis on speaking and writing in the native tongue. And so they have people coming all the time to learn from them. And so it's kind of neat to see that they actually hosted a conference here. Along those same lines, the BUHS German Exchange is traveling on November 8th to the 20th. And I'm here on Karen Sebastian's behalf to ask for the board to extend the insurance rider for that trip and also cover the cost of one sub for 5 days. The trip will be led by Karen Sebastian and Kathleen Socchio, who is a former teacher. They're working with our sister school in Leipzig, as they have for many years. Students are going to miss 4.5 days of school, but they'll be leaving after the half in-service day on November 8th. So I would ask the board to grant that student insurance rider.
Is there a motion?
Motion to grant the insurance, right?
Second?
Well, hold on, and we should, let's just tack on, a little friendly tack on, to add on, to cover the cost of the substitute as well.
Missed that.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay,
Insurance.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Excellent.
Great, thank you. Sean, I want to let you know that right now from the art department, we have 12 students who have completed their application for the Governor's Institute, and many other students are working on their Ames scholarship as well. That's just the art department. Governor's Institute, if you're not aware, is a summer program. They cover everything from cultural diversity to science and engineering. They do lake studies on Lake Champlain. It's a 2-week program. In some cases, it's a 1-week program. We've had students go to the Governor's Institute. If you know students who are looking for something to do this summer, please encourage them. It's a fantastic program. We have scholarships available for students as well. And I can't say enough about it. I can't tell you the number of students who have gone away, not sure what they wanted to do when they grew up, and came back with a passion. So it's a great experience. So. The music department has been dodging snowballs since snow days. Finally, though, they did have their all-district band night a day late last Wednesday. It was a great success. I had several emails from parents singing the praises of Steve Rice, as well as all of the other music educators, K-12 in this district. It was a phenomenal evening. Over 200 musicians from all across our district. And as you know, Steve Rice has been here for a long time, and he does an amazing job working with kids in kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. And along those same lines, Reese Glennon, Zed Kazadi Morgan, and Sebastian Paquette represented BUHS at the New England Music Festival in Burlington, Connecticut last weekend as well. So our rescheduled concert is Tuesday, tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the auditorium. And the BUHS chorus concert is Thursday the 29th. And you talked about yours, right? Okay. I have a request from a science teacher, Ben Lord. Ben Lord is writing to request a leave of absence during the spring semester of the 2018-19 school year. That would begin after he completes the fall term. You know, Ben is making this request for personal reasons, and I would ask that the board support that. He does. I've talked to him. You know, he's fine. He's healthy. He plans to come back the following year, but I would ask the board to grant him an unpaid leave for the spring semester of the 2018-19 school year.
I move that we grant Ben Lord an absence of leave for the spring semester 2019, right?
Yes.
Second.
Move second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Great.
And Spring sports started today. There are students all over the building because the fields are covered with snow. Bill Jan, who is a former counselor who also grooms the cross-country trails up at Familari, posted today that he groomed the cross-country trails today. I reminded him that it's spring sports now, but they're still groomed and ready to go. And Chris Sawyer's done a great job of juggling 2 gyms and a whole lot of sports teams. So we're looking forward to some great Colonel sports in a few weeks. On April 25th, we'll be doing a parent education evening on proficiency-based learning. It is going to be basically the same program we offered in November for another set of parents who want to come and learn about proficiency-based learning, what it looks like here at BUHS. We would anticipate that we'll have another session later on at the end of June as well, but we wanted to offer the session that we did in November again. We had a couple of days we were kicking around, but we went to the 25th because we want to be sure that we won't have snow days. I just jinxed it, I'm sorry. Also, we did have a walkout as well. We had about 250 students leave the building. They left the building at 5 of 10. They were back in classes at 10:30 for the most part. And I have to say that they were incredibly respectful of the public. They were respectful of the teachers. The student organizers, 2 of them met with me several times to kind of go through their concerns, what they wanted to do. And they had 3 speakers, each student spoke and did a nice job. And then they sang a song that was written by the students in Parkland about their loss on Valentine's Day. And I was very proud of them. Our staff was also great. They went out, they maintained their neutrality. They supported the students, they supervised the students, got them back into class, and just kind of kept the day going without interruption. I also want to mention that Peter Elwell worked with those students. They requested a road closure. It was reported that I asked for the road closure. I did not. The students asked for it, and it was granted. And Peter was fantastic with the students. He met with them, talked about what a road closure meant, what they needed to do. And I also want to thank our SRO, Mark Anderson, as well as Brat PD, who provided great oversight and kind of kept everybody safe. And the only glitch along the way, and I guess I have to correct this up front, there were reports, and they're erroneous reports, that we had students that held a flag upside down and stomped on a flag. That is not true, period. A community member did that on the sidewalk. Our students did not do that. Whether you think they can or not, I have to correct the assumption that they did. They did not. They were fantastic. So, any questions?
I was going to kind of ask you about the outside influence or interference. You just mentioned that incident. Was there any others? Was there heckling or?
No, the community members that showed up, and several of them contacted me. You know, members of Rotary contacted me and said, would it be okay if we came and stood in solidarity with the students? The Interfaith Council actually contacted me, Lee Sparrow, and asked if they could show up and kind of support the kids. You know, for the most part, the community members were respectful as well. It was really kind of poignant when the students walked out, they were actually there clapping. And for the most part, they really let it be a student advocacy moment, which was important. So, and they did. I have to give, again, the students a ton of credit. They did this really well, and they were very classy about it. So.
This isn't just a flash in the wind, though. Either.
Well, we did have that same day. We had a voter registration table set up, so students could actually register to vote. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that when I circle back with those student leaders, that we can talk more about. So you've had this very empowering moment with the walkout, but now how are you going to translate that moment into real legislative action? And both Molly Durling and Cassie Dunn spoke at length with incredible authority about the bills that were in Congress and state and the federal level and what they were advocating for. And I'm hoping they can continue to get that message out.
Can you confirm any other, like a trip up to Montpelier on a bus or anything like that upcoming?
I don't know if they're organizing it. I think they are.
if something was organized like that, would that be considered school, under our school, or would that be independent?
It wouldn't go as a school event, but it's on a Saturday as well, so they would do it, yeah. So,
Thanks.
And just related to that, I know that I've heard in the community that there's an advocacy group that is paying for a bus for people to go up to Montpelier for Saturday,
Yeah.
but it's more open to the public. And I think it was talked about at the walkout at the high school end, but it's a community thing.
Okay.
Can do.
which is great.
It's an important distinction, I think.
Yep.
And Lyle has been great working with all of the administrators, reminding us of our charge to make sure that we are neutral and that we are, not becoming a part of the political process, that, we are presenting and supporting everybody, all of our students.
Could you define what you mean by neutral? And I think, Lyle, you said that, let's see. I don't know exactly what it is, but you were quoted in the paper.
Yes.
Oh, an official position. So, I mean, I was a little bit surprised, I guess, by that, because neutrality, I think it was really well done. But neutrality I kind of question, what does neutrality mean in this case?
So if I can.
Sure.
Thank you. We have to be safe for all students, and some people are having a hard time separating school safety from gun rights. And this was a chance for our students and student leaders to be supportive of what happened in Parkland and to walk out in support of school safety, which is different from gun rights. And we have many, many people in this community that are hunters, that believe that they have a right to own a gun. And we need to make sure that our students can come to us whether they believe in that or whether they don't. And so I've been really working hard with all of our administrators to make sure that teachers can't, on their own, out of work hours, absolutely everybody should be able to be as political as they want. But within school, every student needs to feel like they can go to the teacher no matter what their political beliefs are. So that's what I've been meaning by neutrality. You can't be overt in your political beliefs in a classroom.
Can I just ask, it's been in the paper that the two of you will be on a panel on
Yep, that's
Friday?
in
Oh,
mine.
you're going to be talking about that? Or
Sure.
Okay, so I'll anxiously wait
Good
to hear what you have to
segue.
say. Is this to say, were you done? And so it'll just slide, or no?
Let me just make sure. Yes.
Okay, then it'll just slide.
Okay.
Is there any other questions for Steve before we move on? Okay, great. Let's central office.
So, as Russ just said, both Steve and I will be on a school safety panel. It's being put together. Bob Audette from Brattleboro Reformer contacted us. Wyndham Central Superintendent Bill Anton, Wyndham Central Leland and Gray Principal, Bob Tebow will also be a part of that. And they will be talking about school safety at that time, asking questions at 6 o'clock on Friday, right? 6 to 8?
In the multipurpose
In the
room.
multipurpose room, right. So, as of course you all are aware, and I actually have my calendar to talk with Bob Audette, we can talk about school safety sort of on a 30,000 foot level. What we cannot ever talk about in an open session anywhere are specifics. And I think you would all agree, especially any of you with children in schools, we can't talk about, if this happens, this is what we do. Those types of conversations need to be kept confidential. So we will be talking about the fact that we do drills, and we are working with law enforcement and local responders, but specifics is something that we won't be able to discuss.
But you would be having an outline of Alice probably, right?
We can talk about Alice and what
Yeah.
Alice is, yeah,
Sure.
just not, in this case, this is what these kids would do in, band.
But Alice leaves, it's sort of a broad parameter
Correct.
that would be implemented according to a specific situation. So
Yep.
it covers everything, I believe, right?
Alice?
So the choice would be made on a timeline that had to do with the situation. So there is no way to pre-predict, how Alice would be implemented.
Correct. But what I'm saying is we can't say people in this part of the school would be evacuating to this particular place.
Because you would not.
We may not know.
Right.
We may drill that, but we may not know in
Yeah.
any situation what would
No.
And
actually
you wouldn't want the location that they're evacuating to
be
known
known.
by an active shooter.
Right.
Bad.
Well, I think too, just also with Lyle was saying too, I think part of it is, I know I've gotten questions since Parkland, but otherwise too, as the chair of the board, like what would happen if it happened at the school? And I've just been very clear about the fact that we can't talk about specifics because every situation is going to be a little bit different. But people have really asked the question like, all right, if my kid is in room 110 and an active shooter is by room 105, where's my kid going? And I'm like, there's no way for any of us to know that at that point because what's the safest thing in that situation? So, but I've gotten people wanting real specific answers to specific scenarios. And I think what Lyle's saying too is that if those questions start to come up when they're having this panel, that they're not going to go there because there's just no way to do that appropriately.
And as you know with Alice, there's a certain degree of judgment on a call of a teacher in charge of students, Are we going to shelter in place? Are we going to evacuate? So, as you said, there's no real way of knowing.
Are you familiar with Alice?
I remember speaking about it on the town board,
Okay.
but that was a couple, 3 years ago.
Could you just remind us of what the...
Yeah, so Alice is, beyond doing a regular lockdown where you huddle in the corner, Alice is kind of an options-based program where we train teachers and students to kind of consider where a threat might be and how they would respond. For example, if we heard now that there was a threat in the high school gymnasium, our choice would probably be to evacuate, right? If we found out there was one here at the tip, we'd probably have, or at the PTC, we'd have a very different response. So ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, meaning we inform everybody about what's going on as much as we can. So, it used to be you'd hide in the corner and not say anything with a loudspeaker. The whole idea of ALICE is that you do inform everybody in the building what's happening as much as you can. C stands for counter. If somebody was to gain access, that you should feel that you are empowered to counter if you need to. And then evacuate means to just, what it says, get out. So that's the short version.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve.
And my only other thing is I also have gotten communications about how great the band night was, both complimenting Steve Rice and the elementary band teachers across WSESU, so it's great.
And that's it? Good. So there's nobody here from Student Council. The only thing I wanted to say as board chair is welcome Rick officially to BUHS number 6 board. He served on Dummerston for a number of years, so he knew what he was getting himself into, I think, which is good. So welcome aboard and thank you for jumping in.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I just want to thank Lyle especially and everyone else for following up on it about that neutrality, maintaining that neutral stance. There's a lot of political charge around these issues. I'm sure there are people in this room on either side of it, and I appreciate our schools being neutral, allowing kids to express their own political viewpoints without imposing anything on them.
Excellent. Okay. So that's all the administrative reports. There's nothing listed under unfinished business. Under new business, Sean had something he wanted to talk
Yes, I
about,
would
but
like
otherwise...
to, and it is in conjunction what we've just been talking about in terms of the potential of gun violence. And the town school board, as maybe people saw in the paper on Saturday, has written up a resolution, which I copied, and other schools are within the WSESU, the school boards are also interested in perhaps forming or having a resolution that they can support. So I'm very much in favor of this. I read carefully through their resolution, and basically what it does is just sort of reiterate what is happening in the state legislature for trying to control some aspects of public possession of certain military-style items. And I think it's very well written, and personally, I would be very much interested in bringing that to a vote at some point on this board, hopefully sooner rather than later, so that the legislators would have a clear idea on how the boards stood on this issue. So it's important to me. It was unanimous on the town school board, so everybody signed off on it. And it's pretty specific on what they're recommending. So this, once again, this is available on the WSESU website. You just go to boards, and then you can go to town board, Brattleboro Town Board, and it's right in the minutes. And it shows the representatives and the people that they would like to contact in the state government. So I think it's...
Which date was the minutes, Sean?
It's the last minute on the town school board,
March 14th, probably.
March 14th, yeah.
The Brattleboro Town School.
Brattleboro.
Yeah, this is actually, the resolution that they passed is actually has a date of March 6th on it. It's very clear what they're concerned about, and it mimicked very closely the concerns that I have. And so I wrote to Jill Stahl and said, you know, if possible, I would love to have my signature on this. And so I got a response from Robin Morgan, and so she thanked me for my interest in it. And then I indicated that I would bring it up at this meeting tonight. So I don't think I could make a motion, but I think it would be something worthwhile. And if anybody has any ideas how to carry that out, I would love to hear it.
Well, I would think, maybe what I hear you saying is encouraging board members to read this,
Yes,
and then at the next meeting, you could make a motion to adopt it.
Yeah.
If you wanted to change any wording in it, and maybe send that out ahead of time to board members, and then that's what, that would be the procedure to how to do this.
yes.
Would be for,
Well, it would
give you a
have to be-
chance to read it ahead of time.
They have to be warned if we're gonna take action.
Right, exactly, yeah. But also just to have it be, so if you wanted to send it out to all the board members
Sure.
to have a chance to read it ahead of time, and then we could put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and then we
Okay.
could go ahead and make
All
a
right.
motion about
I
it.
mean, I think there have been other school boards in the state of Vermont that have done similar resolutions, according to Robin.
Apparently Putney has,
Yes, Putney made a similar resolution. It's attached to our March 1st minutes. It's more formal and contains a lot of words like whereas, but if you'd like to take a look at that as well.
Well, this one does also. Yeah, but I think that there've been another number of boards that wanted to have their feelings recognized and their desires, formally sent to the legislature and the governor, so.
I agree with Sean in terms of having this, but I think, sort of bouncing off what Ian said and what Stephen Lyle said, is to recognize a couple of things, of the distinction between a board action and a teacher
administration, yeah.
administration action.
Oh, absolutely.
That's really, that's important. So if something like this were to pass, it's not to institute this shall be taught in classes or anything like that.
No.
And also, it's to be, as Lyle was talking about, that it's, there are two sides to it. I mean, I'm certainly on one side of the issue, but it's got to, and I think it's good that we're not taking any sort of votes today, and that it should be now so that people can express their views. But I would hope it'd be respectful so that whatever side you're on, that you understand what the other side is, and that that neither side is dismissive of the other, and that we can have a discussion, and whether it's unanimous or not unanimous. I mean, we deal with contentious issues all the time. Sometimes political and sometimes not. I mean, ranging from sports teams to Latin in the school to diversity coordinators, different support programs. So it doesn't mean that we need to have an absolute clear right decision. I mean, the gun issue is a difficult decision because there are compelling arguments on both sides. And so,
Yeah, but this resolution, I appreciate what you're saying,
yeah.
but this resolution does not specifically talk about, in big quotations, the gun issue. It has very specific things.
Well, I think it has
Vermont-
recommendations.
no, let me finish.
Sorry.
The Vermont legislature and the governor have already voiced very clearly as to what their desires to be. And it all is in conjunction with the students at Parkland and what they experienced and how they feel as if they need protection. So that's my point, that if students that have actually witnessed a classmate being murdered in front of them, then you have to listen very carefully to what they have experienced and what they desire. To me, that trumps, excuse me, that word, almost everything, because it's such a personal experience. And that is the genesis of this resolution, is those students. So the school board is not following their personal feelings so much as expressing a heartfelt respect for students that had to experience a horrific situation.
Sean, I agree with everything, and I would be, I would be enthusiastically supporting that statement. That type of thing, and everything that you said about that, that's the stand that I would personally take as well. But what I'm saying is that I guess the one thing that I disagree with what you said is that it's not a gun issue. It is a gun issue because if we were to pass that, if I read it right, we would be specifically endorsing certain gun legislation. So to say it doesn't deal with guns.
Well, we wouldn't pass it.
Oh,
The
well,
legislature is.
I know, but we would be
pass the resolution.
encouraging, we'd be encouraging, I'm not, we don't have any rights to pass
No, we
any gun
have no
legislation.
power.
But we'd be encouraging our legislators to do that, which I personally have already done. But we've, it's a majority vote, and there are differing views to that, which we need to respect. But
There
then
always are.
we vote
There
our
always are.
conscience
I mean,
and our
that's stay
support.
complete.
And
There
so,
always.
yeah, so I think you've got my vote, but it's the way it's couched, I think, is really important as well, both in terms of separating it out of board and talking about school safety and guns doing with school safety. So we sort of set general types of policy about how to run things, and then the administrators, in this case, it would just be purely advisory.
It's just a resolution.
Right.
So it's similar to the resolution that came to all the towns about the one that was just passed at town meeting day. A resolution has no binding power.
Right.
It's just a resolution.
But I want to make sure that we weren't disrespecting other people, even though the students would be coming to us.
I
That
hope
we,
that I do not disrespect other
Right.
people. I have no intention to do
Well, Sean will distribute it to all the board members, and then we can vote next week, next meeting. Speaking of distributing, Did everybody get their new email address from the WSESU? Huh?
Somehow we spelled
Close.
his name
Very
wrong.
close.
It was really
One
close.
letter on the keyboard off.
All right,
We'll fix that.
so there's some adjustments that need to be made, but, so I just want to remind everybody that now we have these new emails. All your school board stuff should be, it'll just make your life a little bit easier to have it there, but also open reading law stuff still, never reply all to a board member or anything like that because it becomes a meeting at that point, so don't do that, please.
The one exception being to schedule meetings.
Right, the schedule.
Please hit reply all
Yeah,
when you're trying
yeah,
to
but
schedule
as far
meetings.
as communication on stuff, I don't know about anybody else, but like I'm a town meeting rep for Brattleboro, I'm a town meeting representative for Brattleboro, and there's been a lot of conversations going on through emails in that, and I'm curious whether or not everybody that's opened that email has violated open meeting law. Yeah, Sean?
I didn't receive any information about new email contacts.
Okay.
You're right, you didn't, because I don't have your old email.
It's the same it's always been.
Okay,
It should be on the sheet, yeah.
I'll check on the sheet.
Okay. Because,
And I, hopefully, would there be with that email, a list of individuals that fall under that umbrella? So that if I'm going to be forwarding this resolution before our next meeting,
I can send them to you.
that I could have all those email addresses.
Yep.
And that'd be great, thank you, Lon.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things with the email system. You could inadvertently, and if you keep your calendar on Google or anything like that, you want to make sure that you keep your settings private. Because for several days, I didn't realize that my entire calendar was open to everybody in WSESU.
Everybody knew when he was going to the dentist.
Everybody knew everything about me. So that's one caution. The other thing is, if you just type in a name for anybody that works at WSESU, you'll get, their email will pop up.
Oh, okay.
So you can just put in Ian's name and Ann's name, and it'll just fill it in for you.
Perfect.
The other thing we can do is, I know Keith can do this, and I can do this for sure, is if you want, we can actually set it up so your WSESU email forwards automatically to your email.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that you can't obviously email directly back from your email, but at least
Oh,
you'll
you
know.
need my personal email?
Yeah.
No, I don't care about that. I'd rather have a dedicated
Great.
school board email. So what, it's the name and then WSESU?
First initial, last name at WSESU, unless there's somebody else that has that word already. And then it's usually like your first two initials and your last name at WSESU.org.
Oh, that's kind of simplified.
For clarification, so if he sends out this resolution, he has to send it to me separate, to you separate?
no, you can send out one group email to everybody, here's a piece of information.
Yeah.
But then you can't decide to have a
reply
conversation,
all.
to reply all and have a conversation with Sean about it that all of us are then included on, because then that is what becomes the open meeting law issue. Like if you decided to ask a question about the thing, you could email Sean individually and say, Sean, thank you very much for emailing this, I have a question about
Or
paragraph
changes.
3 or a suggestion or
And is that
something.
because we're discussing that here with the approval to send it out?
Right.
Because you can't just send,
Yeah.
you can't send out a document that hasn't been discussed prior.
Well, you can send out a document, but it's just, but if you have a discussion that everybody's involved in, it's an unwarned meeting,
Okay.
and that's the issue. So, but if you wanted to have, like, if he sends it out, and then you want to have a question to Sean, just email just to Sean back and
Any
say,
changes or whatever.
Or any
could be
changes to the-
proposed at that time.
right,
And then-
but not as a reply all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the issue. Just because then
Oh,
it's an unwarned meeting.
This is a little bit of an aside, but I did ask a question at a recent meeting about minutes for subcommittee meetings. Because there was a question that came about Tenny wanting to have the minutes right away from the finance meeting. Frank actually does the finance meeting, but we never have had BAM's subcommittee finance meeting minutes, nor TCC, nor WRCC, or the.
Because the way I understand it, technically speaking,
Bring it back here.
when we bring it back here, the report that is done here under consent agenda qualifies as the minutes for that meeting.
If there was a clarification, because, I mean, it's too bad that the Tenny wrote to everybody on the finance committee and sort of said, you haven't posted your minutes as if it was something that we were gonna go to jail for soon. And I thought, it's all reported here,
Okay.
and then these minutes are made public. So
And those are the minutes, yeah. That's my understanding is that the consent, thank you. But I'll verify that.
yeah.
The only issue I could see with something like finance that doesn't meet necessarily near this meeting is the timing, because
Oh,
you
yeah.
have a certain amount of time to release minutes.
5 days.
So for like TCC and PMP that meet right before this meeting,
Right,
no
big
problem.
deal.
But if finance meets more than that 5 days before this meeting,
that's true.
that could be
That's
the,
true.
Yeah, could be
That's
the
a good
issue.
point,
issue.
and maybe that's why Frank does it so
Yeah.
quickly.
Okay. Well, we'll verify that and make sure that we're in the place we need to be about that. Excellent. So anything else tonight? So now we've figured out how we leave this room.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you, Ruth.
It wasn't the